Hey guys, we're going to talk today about one of the most basic concepts in music theory, and that is rhythm. Before we can really, though, get a grasp on where we're going with this, we kind of have to talk about two other really important concepts, ones that are really easy to confuse. In fact, most beginning musicians think they are the same, and that's the beat and the rhythm. The beat in music is the steady underlying pulse. Because of that, it's continuous and it's always there. It's something that as a musician you feel more than anything else. The audience will feel it too, but it's super important that you realize that the beat is there, it's in the background. But the important thing that we want to talk about if we're musicians is that pattern of change that we're going to play or sing over the top of that steady beat. That's something that's going to be performed, and that's the rhythm. Now, you may have noticed in the past that this is the most bizarrely spelled word in the English language, and it's mostly because it's a Greek word and not an English one. So, yeah, curses English, you've done it again. All right, so if we're going to talk about rhythm, that pattern of change over the steady beat, we have to be able to describe things that are different lengths. And that different length in time is what we call duration. So we have symbols that we call notes that describe how long a sound is going to be played or last for. We use these symbols in different ways, and we kind of have to be able to identify different notes based on how they look. And so there are specific parts about notes. You can see that there is this note head. This note head on this note all the way to the left is colored in. Not all note heads need to be colored in. Notes have stems. This note stem is going up, and the note stems over here are going down. You'll notice that the note stems are on specific sides of the head. If they go up, they look like they make the letter D, and if they go down, they look like the letter P. This is super important if you don't want to look like an idiot after you let your tattoo artist do whatever they want with the notes you've asked them to indelibly ink on your person. Now, it is possible to have a note head with no stem, but those note heads would have to be clear and not colored in. Some notes have flags. Those are on the extreme ends of the stems. And if there are multiple notes with flags, you can put those flags together in a beam. Now, this sets the stage for this most important part of these symbols we call notes. It is important, before we talk about what they are, is that you realize that they are not named just after whatever you see looking out the window or traditional ways. It's just has to do with how they relate to each other. And so that's it can be very confusing if you don't realize that we call it a whole note because it lasts the whole time. It's also important for you to realize that no note is equivalent to any numerical value until and unless it's in a time signature. And so none of these notes are worth any numbers. Quarter notes aren't equal to 1 unless you happen to be in simple time, which we'll talk about later. So the notes of these names. So this note that is just a clear note head without a stem, that is the whole note. It lasts for the whole time. The next subdivision lower than that is a note with a clear note head, but it has a note stem. It is roughly equivalent to half the value of a whole note. There are 2 half notes inside the value of every one whole note. And so 1 half note is worth half the value of the whole. That's why we call it half and not George. The next subdivision level down is the quarter note. Quarter notes have colored in note heads and stems. 1 quarter note is worth a quarter of the value of a whole note. That's where it gets its name. If you're looking to see how many quarter notes fit inside the value of 1 half note, that would be 2, or half the value. You see how the math works. The next subdivision level down is an 8th note with a colored in note head, a stem, and a flag. These 8th notes, 1/8 note is worth 1/8 of the value of the whole note. That's how it got its name. There are 2/8 notes in the value of every 1/4 note and 4/8 notes in the value of every 1/2 note. Maybe you've noticed something about these names that is vaguely mathematical, and that's on purpose. Whole, half, quarter, eighth. We're just subdividing into 2. The next level down would be 16th, and then 32nd and 64th, 128th. All of those things from there on out. The convention for creating the new note follows a pattern from here on out. After 8th notes, the next level now just has an extra flag. So 16th note has a colored in note head, a stem, and 2 flags. A 32nd note, colored in note hem, a stem, and 3 flags. All right. After a while, you're just getting silly with how many subdivisions we can have, because although it is mathematically possible, it's not very probable. And so this is the problem we have in math all of the time. In the next video, we'll talk about the symbols that we use to communicate about silence and some of the other things that are important to doing rhythm duration. Good luck.